This is the Rocket City Retirement Show with Chris Wallace. Chris loves educating people in person and over the airwaves. Whether it's retirement planning, investing, tax, or legacy, Chris prides himself in helping protect what matters to you. This is the Rocket City Retirement Show.
Welcome to the Rocket City Retirement Show. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer, here with certified financial planner and financial advisor Chris Wallace. He's president of WG Financial Group. And then also joining us from the firm, Graham Bauer. He's a certified financial planner as well and a financial advisor there at the firm. And both are here again today, like always, to give you very helpful advice about retirement planning. So excited to get into our show today. If there are questions that you have about anything we discuss, you can get in to see Chris complimentary, okay? So here's the phone number, 256-937-2010. You may call that number, or if you prefer, you can text the word visit and get on the calendar that way and get a complimentary discovery session to see how you are doing in planning for your retirement. Remember, you can always check us out on Facebook during the week. Just search for WG Financial Group 256. Our motto is plan, retire, and play. And that's what this is all about. We want to make sure you understand what you need to plan for, how you can retire. And then, of course, we want you to be able to play and live out your dreams in retirement. Find us online anytime at wgfinancialgroup.com. And remember, this show is available anywhere you get your podcast. Just search for the Rocket City Retirement Show. Chris and Graham, so excited to get started today.
Hey, I was excited to be here as well, Lou Ann. It's going to be a fun show.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we got a lot of good stuff to talk about today. So
I know. So we're going to kind of kick it off with something different and fun. And can I say where it's from? That's okay to say, right?
Well, I would just say we got it from social media.
Okay, social media, no names either, no names involved.
Right. And I think we've talked about this before. Graham and I have mentioned this on the air where we're on social media and we see these reels, these little video clips, in case you're not sure what we're talking about when we say reels, REELS. And they're just, some of the advice is kind of, as my kids would say it, suspect. They just shorten
sus.
it. Dad, that's kind of sus. So some of these reels, these clips that we watch are just kind of like, I don't know if I really agree with that. And so we've actually talked about that on a couple of shows before. So she basically says, and again, not naming any names here, she basically says a 401k is really a bad vehicle to save for retirement. And that's what she says. But she doesn't, in fairness to her, doesn't give an alternative. She just basically said this is some of the worst advice, ever, worst type of a plan, whatever she just said there. What are your thoughts on just kind of what she just said?
yeah, so I mean, I've heard similar rhetoric to this before. I feel like my algorithms on social media platforms maybe know what I do for a living and like to feed me the term of what we might call like rage bait nowadays. Where they're like, they know this is going to make me upset to watch it because I'm like, oh no, that's not right. Usually when I see something like this, my first thought is, what are you selling? When you're, talking about things like this, I would say, and, maybe someone could check me on this, but I'm pretty confident if you've listened to this show for a while, one word that we don't use a lot is scam. Like scam is kind of somewhat of a red flag word to me, to be calling things a scam, because a lot of times when you're calling something a scam, you're proposing some kind of alternative and trying to maybe pull people away from the popular choice. But one thing I'll add, just from a historical context, and maybe there's a little bit more history here, but starting out with that it was created to get people to reinvest in the stock market after the Depression. The actual 401k plan, Section 401k in the IRC, didn't come into fruition until 1978. So, Great Depression was the 1930s mostly. By the 70s, I would say late 70s, we were pretty well recovered from the 1930s. There's a lot of other... there are some genuine criticisms, by the way, that you could give to 401k plans. I'm not saying that they're the greatest thing since sliced bread and there's never anything wrong with them. There can certainly be things that I don't like about certain 401k plans. But, to make a blanket statement that it's just bad to have one, bad to invest in one, and or
one of the worst
scam.
retirement vehicles is what
Yeah,
she says.
one of the worst retirement vehicles, just based on the flexibility of them, of a lot of them with pre-tax and Roth and the matches and all that. I would just like to hear, I guess, more information about why someone would think that. But initially, I would have to very much disagree.
Yeah, I would too. And so here's a couple of things too, just to kind of note. So we're talking about, she says that they were created initially, as Graham noted, for a way for people to get back in the stock market. Meanwhile, from 1929 to 1978, the S&P was up 1,155%, or basically an average of 7.7% per year. So there are plenty of people investing at that time. And we're talking 50 years later is, the Great Depression, 1929. And then you've got the 401k that comes on the scene in 1978. Let me throw in this as well. In 2024, according to FedSmith, there were a record high number of TSP millionaires. According to Morningstar, in 2024, the millionaires jumped by 24%. So that's just starkly different than what she says about it being a bad way to invest your money. Now, again, we don't know where she's kind of going with, I've got maybe this cash value life insurance I want you to buy from me. I don't know exactly where that reel was going, because when you look at these reels, it's a snip of a conversation. So I hope that we're not taking it out of context. But when you make a blanket statement that a 401k is a really bad retirement vehicle, we have the exact opposite view. And the data supports why 401ks are important, why we think people should invest in them. And I'll kind of give you a couple of rundowns why we believe in them. Number one, I just rattled off statistics from both TSP and then also from Morningstar talking about the number of millionaires that have 401ks. 401ks also offer you a way to put in large sums of money, much higher than a traditional IRA, much higher than a simple IRA. And nowadays, you can actually do Roth. So if the argument is, well, you're putting in pre-tax money and you're going to give the government, the IRS, they're going to own part of that, and all of that's true when you're talking about pre-tax. Well, now a lot of 401ks give you the ability to put in Roth IRA money. So if you're 50 or older right now, between 50 and age 59, you can actually put in $31,000 of Roth 401k money. So there is no tax on it. So that debunks that argument. And then if you are between the ages of 60 and 63, you can actually put in $34,250 of that in all Roth if you choose to do that and if your plan offers that. So again, the argument that they're a bad vehicle, I don't understand that. And I think the hidden benefit of a 401k is it pulls money out of your paycheck that doesn't go in your bank account. And it's kind of like forced savings because, hey, I'm human. And if money finds its way into my bank account, just like a lot of people, I think we're more inclined to find a way to spend it in some cases. Mm-hmm. So the 401k gives us that alternative. I call it out of sight, out of hand, out of mind. And so I don't know, this real, I feel like this is real bad advice. Pardon the pun.
REEL.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard people say, and I understand this to an extent, that, there is a level of inflexibility with qualified retirement plans, like a 401k, like an IRA, like a Roth IRA, because, there's some stipulations other than contributions in a Roth IRA that you can't necessarily get to all those funds until you're age 59 and a half without penalty. However, I do think the reality is that for most people, unless you are a very, very, very high income earner or someone that spends so little that you can save tremendously, it's going to be pretty hard for most people to be getting out of the workforce before, the rule of 55, age 55 rule, or before 59 and a half. There's not many people that are retiring at 40 years old. And if you are, that's great for you, but that probably means you made a lot of money during your working years, or, you made a good salary and you saved absolutely everything. Or
you didn't have kids.
Yeah.
You didn't have kids.
You didn't have kids, maybe didn't get married and you just got it saved everything. Yeah. There's probably scenarios out there where that's happened, but I wouldn't say that's the norm for most people. And again, so, I mean, when you're talking about saving for retirement, it's almost like sometimes to people, it's looked at as a bad thing to save for retirement specifically. Like, oh, I'm saving this money for retirement, but what if I want to go buy a house with it? And I feel like my argument to that would be, well, save some money elsewhere to buy a house with if you think you're going to do that, and let your retirement savings be your retirement savings. So, I mean, that inflexibility, you know, can be somewhat of a turnoff to some people. But at the same time, if you just had all your retirement savings in something that was as liquid as a bank account, you would probably dip into it a lot more throughout your lifetime. But having some of those safeguards is really protecting you from yourself in a lot of ways to say, okay, you're not going to get to the point where you're 59 and a half and you have nothing saved, because every time you need a new car, you just pull it out of your 401k. Every time, you know, pay for the kids' college, we're pulling it out of the 401k. And now we don't have any 401k left when, you know, you're 60. So I do think for all of, you know, maybe what could be considered as a negative there really is a positive angle to that too.
Well, also the Secure Act actually passed the auto enrollment in Secure Act 2.0. So, you know, I think people of the government, and again, I am not for the government telling us what to do, except some of us need to be told that we need to save more money. And I was one of those young people. So I had to learn much later in life. But one of the last comments, and we'll kind of wrap it up and move on to some federal government talk here. She says something along the lines of, you can't save yourself for retirement or something along those lines. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, how do you get there?
Right.
Like it is maybe she is promoting buying rental properties. And there are people out there that are very successful at buying rental properties, but there are a lot of people that don't want to do rental properties. And these people that make these videos and write books on how to buy and sell rental properties, I mean, not everybody can do that. I mean, that's just not, but most people can find a way to save in their retirement plans. And that's kind of our point here. You know, the last 15 years, the market's been really, really good. And I think that those people that have invested and stayed invested have paid off. It's paid off for them. So, so with that, let's kind of move into some Fed talk here. We'll have another video hopefully next week that we can kind of go over.
There are plenty to go over. Yeah, there's no shortage of suspect financial advice on the internet.
Graham's he's going to be on the prowl next week. So he's going to send us a good one next week.
There you go.
Yeah.
I love
so
it.
let's just kind of talk a little Fed talk, if we will.
Dear. Okay.
Yeah. So let's kind of get into that. So let's just talk a little bit about the life insurance at the federal government. So one of the things that while you're there, you will be eligible to pick option A, B, or C with the federal government. But really what I want to lean towards is, one, when you're given those options, they, initially when you're hired, they really don't have an ongoing open enrollment like they do for health insurance. So like you could, every November through the first part of December, you can actually change your health insurance plan. Okay. Well, with life insurance, they really don't have these open enrollments. So once you make a decision, you're kind of stuck with that. So I've seen situations before where an individual has come down with a couple health issues. Maybe there's the potential for that person's life expectancy to be cut short. Now, the thing that we have to remember is if we have an ailment or some type of health condition and we need the additional life insurance, it's probably worth paying a little bit more in premium to have that, because chances are if you have certain types of health conditions, you're not going to be able to buy insurance on the outside. Well, you already have it through the federal government and you can take that with you. Now, again, going to be a little bit expensive, but here's kind of the key thing to remember. As you go through your retirement and you hit certain, let's just call it age milestones, the insurance is going to increase on you, but you also have the option to drop a little bit of it as well. So you can always go down in coverage. You just can't go up. So for example, if you've got, 5 multipliers of your salary, you go into retirement with that, you can always drop that later on. What you can't do is drop it at retirement and then all of a sudden go back up later. It's like, oh, shoot, I should have kept the life insurance. Let me get it back. Well, too bad. You're not going to be able to do that. So I think it's important to make that decision, work with a financial advisor. I know we work with a lot of federal employees here at the office and really walk through what makes sense. And like I said, I've seen situations where it makes sense to carry it. And then I've also seen the situations where we carry it for a little while and then we decrease it. Because what life insurance is at the end of the day, and I am not a life insurance salesman. We actually write very little life insurance at the office, but what life insurance is, when you break it down really simple, it is the transfer of risk. You're transferring your risk to the insurance company, and there's a premium for doing so. And you cover that risk for ever how long you need to, whether that's 3 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever that is. And once the risk is covered, then you start decreasing or end up dropping it. And a prime example is a young individual, young family with kids should have a lot of outside life insurance, and it should probably be term in almost all cases. And over time, the idea is, okay, the kids get older, they get through college, I've paid my house off, I don't have any debt, and therefore I don't need my term life insurance, i.e. I'm self-insured at that point. Well, the same thing can actually happen in retirement. I think there are some people that listen to the show and they're thinking, well, I'm older, I'm retired, I don't need life insurance, my wife has my 401k, or my husband has my 401k. That may not be enough. And all I'm saying here is review that, whether you're a federal employee or not, and understand what the needs are. Because what we don't want to have happen is, like I read on one of my advisor Facebook pages that I'm a part of, is a 31-year-old couple in this case, husband passed away. They didn't have enough life insurance. They have 5 kids. And there's not enough money in 401ks at that point. So you have to rely on life insurance. Well, the retiree, some of you listening to the show are going to also be in that same situation where you probably could use a little bit of life insurance. Do we take it with us from our employer? Do we take it with us from the federal government? Do we buy a 10-year term into retirement to cover that risk in case we have a cancer show up or something like that? So anyway, bottom line is work with a planner who can look at that, that situation and really look at it from your best interest and make sure that you're actually needing that. Graham, I don't know if you have anything you want to add on that. I covered a lot there, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think people just, again, it's one of those situations where, you just got to be thinking about your spouse, I think, in these scenarios. And I think the federal government, the FEGLI insurance specifically, is a really good benefit to be considering into retirement because, you forego that underwriting that you would have to go through. So if you've had, a stroke in the last couple of years, if you've had cancer or, some things that the doctors are watching, there's a pretty good chance past a certain age you are going to be uninsurable. So if you're not self-insured, I mean, we've certainly seen situations where the, taking insurance as a federal employee, life insurance into retirement was vital to protecting a spouse because of, a loss of income from Social Security with one spouse passing away or a loss of income from pensions potentially. So it's one of those things where, it's not a one size fits all, but it's definitely something that you shouldn't make a willy-nilly decision on because similar to, Social Security collection after a year, it's going to be irrevocable at that point.
I like the word willy-nilly. I like that. Willy-nilly. What is willy-nilly? Is that like an offshoot of Willie Nelson?
I don't think so.
Okay. Willy-nilly.
I need to know where that came from. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, all right. So there's been a lot. So we're on the federal government topic. And so I want to talk about that because I think and I don't know if you've thought about this before, Graham, because we have a lot of federal employees at the office, federal employees, federal government clients. President Trump was voted in. And I can't help but think that some of these people that are federal employees today almost feel like a sacrificial person in some way. They said, you know what, I'm going to vote for President Trump because I believe in his agenda, whatever the case may be, I'm going to vote for him. And now you have a lot of people where their job may be in jeopardy. And so I can't imagine the hardship and the emotional stuff that they're going through. But when we look at federal retirees, I think last year there were 88,157 federal retirees. That was really the lowest number since like 2011, which was, I think, somewhere in the 82,000 range. So over the past several years, it's normally kind of around that 100,000 range of retirees. But last year, there were just less retirees. So I have to wonder, when we're looking at, DOGE and President Trump trying to shrink the federal government payroll, part of me has to wonder if some people were hanging on because they were working from home. So you have people that are eligible for retirement, but they're like, hey, you know what? I'm making a good living. I'm working from home. And I just got to log in and do my work, and I don't have to put up with the traffic. I'm just going to keep working as long as they let me. And of course, then they came out with the kind of the delayed retirement option a few weeks ago. And now from what we're hearing, there is some VERA stuff going on. So a lot of employees, federal government employees, have been offered VERA. And then there's talk of some VSIPs as well. So that's basically where it's kind of a cash incentive to retire. I think the standard VSIP is like $25,000, but if you're actually DOD, I think it's up to $40,000. So, and that's not a lot of money when you think about it.
Yeah, they don't inflation adjust that, I don't think.
No, it's been that way for a while. Yeah, exactly. And so I think from that perspective, it's like, okay, well, that's not a lot of money to retire, but maybe it is a nice chunk if I'm eligible for retirement. So these VERA options, because I ran into somebody where we did a meeting. And by the time they came back in, they'd been offered a VERA. So it changed the course of the planning. So again, if that's something that you're being faced with and you need some retirement help and need a plan built, and should you take it, and what does your long-term outlook look like? That's something that obviously we can assist with at the office. But again, just kind of going back to what I said earlier, I think there's just people out there going, man, I voted for this, but I didn't vote for this, right? And so I feel sorry for those, but we're here to help, for retirement if need be. So the other thing I want to talk about, just as we kind of get towards the end of the show, and I was sitting there, where was I at? I can't remember exactly where I was at. It was on a weekend. And I think the downside of owning your own business is you constantly think about work. And so I was like, okay, my view of life is this. All right. So we were talking about 401ks earlier. Our view, and I say mine and my wife's view, is let's hit our savings targets. And I think, Graham, I think you're probably the same way as well, if I know you well enough, is, I want to hit my savings target. So I want to fill up my 401ks, my wife's 401k, my 401k. I want to max out my HSA. And then I kind of want to make memories with some of the other money. So one of the examples I use with people that I sit down with is my kids are grown. They're not quite off the payroll, but man, they're close. We're trying to inch them off that payroll. They're really close, but they're in college and they come home, and my daughter's in college, and now she's got a boyfriend who's an ex-Marine, which is great. Served the country. I think that's so cool. He's got a great handshake. And it's like, sometimes I don't even want to shake his hand, especially if I wake up and my bones are a little, feeling older that morning or something. He comes over for church. He's like, how you doing, Mr. Wallace? And I hate to be called Mr. Wallace, but but he's awesome. He's great. His name is Chad. He's amazing. And we love him. So glad he's a part of my daughter's life. So anyway, whenever I can get all of them around the dinner table or the breakfast table or the lunch table, and we're out to eat, that's a memory for me. That's something that conversations will come up, things will be remembered, potentially from that lunch or that dinner for years to come. Yes. So I was trying to think of how can I come up with a tagline saying for that type of money? Because even in retirement, our motto is plan, retire, and play. Right? We say that. So I kind of was sitting around and I said, you know what? We can just call it M&M money.
Love it.
Making memories money.
Making memories money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'm not talking about the candy, so I don't want M&M coming after me. I'm just talking about the making memories money, that M&M money that you can have, that once all of your bills, your necessary living expenses are covered, you got a nice, comfortable retirement. Now it's time to use some of that M&M money to start making memories. And I was like, all right, I get this. I think this will work. So I think that'll kind of stick. And when you hear us talk about the M&M money, that's the making memories money that we feel like every family should have to do that with their family. I think what happens in retirement, we've talked about this a number of times on the show. There's this big psychological reaction that happens when you retire. It's like, oh my gosh, I've retired and now I don't have my job income and now I don't have enough. And I've got a recently retired individual that's a client of mine, and he's awesome. He's been a radio listener for a while. Matter of fact, he's the one that came up with TBD, and he's now retired. And he wrote me an email just maybe about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and he just said he was basically thanking me for the time that we sat down and talked, and that he wished we could do it more often. And he told me, he said, I was listening to Graham on the radio, and I'm still struggling with kind of spending that money. So But what I am finding out is this gentleman, even though he's within 1 year, he's inside of his 1 year of being retired. And the times that I've talked to him, he's out doing trips and stuff. So he's using that M&M money and he's going to make memories.
Good.
So I think that's awesome. So, all right, lastly, I don't know what do you think about M&M money before I get into the next thing here?
I like that. I think that's a good way to remember it. And, it's a good reminder to have for people because I guess you mentioned that. This is probably something I guess I talk about this a lot on the radio and I don't even notice it, but I do see it a lot. I mean, people are scared to spend their money fully a lot of times. And even though I would say inheritance is it's actually not a very common goal for people to have. They'll probably end up leaving even more inheritance. But I think a goal that people commonly do have is spending time with family. And so that ties in perfectly with, the M&M money with saying, well, maybe inheritance isn't a goal, but I mean, it's hard. I'm hard pressed to think of someone who's come in and spending time with family wasn't a goal in retirement. I mean, when most people are thinking towards their retirement, that's a pretty big aspect of it, or time with friends, something like that. Yeah. And that's a great way to merge those two things to say, we're going to either have a budget for this or just no budget and say, hey, we're planning on going to the beach anyway. Let's pay for all the kids to come with us and say, or let's pay for them and the grandkids. We'll take them down for the week. I don't think anyone ever regrets doing that. I know that the times where I have spent money, even maybe at times like doing a bigger trip and I feel like, ooh, that was a lot of money. I usually never look back on that and think I really shouldn't have done that because it's not like I necessarily can't afford it. It's just, stretching. Maybe it'll stretch you a little bit, but you're still not going to think back and say, "Oh, I wish I didn't do that, and I had that $5,000 or $10,000 back, in my IRA." I think you'll be glad that you made that memory with your family.
For sure. And as we kind of wrap up segment one, if you're listening to this on the way to church and you want to really check out the whole show, you can go to Apple Podcast or Spotify platforms. And if you need a plan, just to make sure your retirement's in place, or you want to learn how to spend some of that M&M money and make those memories with the family. We're all about that at the office, and we really want you to do that. We really want to see families out there thriving in retirement. You can give us a call at 256-937-2010. Again, the number is 256-937-2010.
With so many worries in life, market volatility shouldn't be on your list. Help ensure your retirement plan is stable and independent of market swings. Just get in touch with Chris Wallace at 256-937-2010. That's 256-937-2010 to start planning.
Quarters, just 25 cents. That's hardly anything, right? But Chris Wallace and his team at WG Financial see quarters a little differently. A quarter is a lot when it's a quarter of your retirement savings. Now, do you want to pay 25% or more in taxes during your retirement? Well, Chris can create a plan to help address that. Now, if the only time you think about taxes is when you file them, you don't have a tax strategy. But it's not too late to get one with the help from Chris Wallace. So act now to make sure you're not paying a quarter, dime, or even a penny more than you should. Call Chris Wallace and his team at WG Financial at 256-937-2010 to schedule your personalized tax strategy session. A quarter saved is a quarter earned. Call 256-937-2010 now. That's 256-937-2010. Investment advisory services made available through AE Wealth Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Firm may not give tax advice.
If you're pondering the longevity of your retirement savings with questions like, is my nest egg sufficient? Or how long will my retirement funds last? Consider scheduling a session with Chris Wallace. Text VISIT to 256-937-2010. Again, text VISIT to 256-937-2010 now to set up your appointment.
And we do thank you so much for joining us today, spending part of your day with us. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer here with Chris Wallace and Graham Bauer. Both are certified financial planners, financial advisors at WG Financial Group. Chris is president there, and you're listening to the Rocket City Retirement Show. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer. So I want to talk real quick about your lunch and learns, Cris. You guys, this is where you go to businesses. Why don't you kind of fill us in on what your topics usually are when you go to the companies?
So it's kind of like some of the radio show talk that we do. But I think also when we go to these businesses, we can actually kind of cater that conversation or tailor the conversation to some of the benefit structures within the company. So a lot of people that's been listening to the show for a while, Graham knows I'm a former plant manager. So I had benefits when I was working. Sometimes they were great. Sometimes they were not so great. And so one of the things that we try to get you to understand is what options you do have and then how they can benefit you. So one of the things that we talk a lot about on the show is HSA plans. So does your company have that? And what does that do? And how's that beneficial now and long term? And does it help me on taxes? But then also just talk about retirement. Like a lot of people, they want to know, how do I get there? And part of that is planning, right? So you want to start planning. I would say that the core market that we typically work with and who typically calls in to talk to us or to meet with us, they're 50 or older. They've got money saved in outside retirement plans. They're not sure exactly what to do with that. They're still working. They contribute to a 401k. And they're like, okay, I'm probably, 10 years away, maybe 10, 15 in some cases. I need to make sure that I keep this train on the right track. And for me personally, Luann, that was my realization in my latter 40s was, okay, we started this business. I invested a lot of money to get this thing off the ground, took a lot of risks to do it. And by doing so, I drained really almost all of my savings.
Right.
So now I had to later in life rebuild my savings. And now Jennifer and I have a rule. And you want to know what that rule is? People have been listening to the show know the rule, but I'll say it again. Do you know what the rule is? Do you recall?
Ooh, no more mistakes. That's the rule, right?
That's it. We call it no more stupid decisions.
No more stupid decisions.
Yeah.
Okay.
We really blunt with it. No more stupid decisions, right? So good, Graham. Good. Yeah, Graham's been doing
I've been around for a while now. I've heard it a few times.
And I do want to point this out because you said financial advisors earlier, Luann, and I don't know. We're proud of this. We're certified financial planners, both Graham and I. We are financial advisors because compliance likes for us to throw that in there as well. But we're CFPs, and we take a lot of pride in that. But lunch and learn is great. We've done a few of those. Would love to do more. Love to just tell people what we do. And if you need that, you're a business owner or HR manager or somebody like that, hey, we're happy to strike up that relationship, and we'll take it from there.
All right, just call. It's complimentary. A lunch and learn for your employees. 256-937-2010. Okay, so many of us have spent decades building our retirement nest egg. And, then you kind of get to retirement and you're like, wow, having a substantial amount of savings isn't even enough. So just like a big old house needs that strong foundation to withstand, all weather that could come through, your retirement plan needs to have that proper structuring because of all the challenges that it's going to face. So Cris and Graham, that's where I want to go right now. I want to talk about what are some of the hidden obstacles that could derail even a well-funded retirement plan.
So one of the things you have to worry about, I think, as a retiree is the withdrawal rate in which you're pulling income. So one of the things that we do at the office is we create a report card. One of the things it does measure is that starting withdrawal income amount that you're having to pull out of the portfolio to make ends meet. And so we think and we believe and we really strongly believe in creating reliable lifetime income streams. So that can mean pensions, that can mean Social Security, making really solid decisions for that. And I'll give you another example. Annuities obviously can create lifetime income. And I know people are like, oh my gosh, I hate annuities, but just hear me out for a second. So let's just say that you're a 67-year-old individual and you want to have, let's say the husband's 66 and the wife is 62. And they're about 2 years from retirement. And we've had a little bit of a market dip. And they know that they're going to retire in 2 years. And we're trying to get some of their necessary living expenses covered by lifetime income. So let's say, for example, you don't have a pension. So now you just have Social Security. So you're literally going to be pulling the rest out of investments. So you could take a look at investing, say, $300,000 into an annuity that in 2 years would provide $24,273. Now, the initial conversation might be, well, I don't want to do that, Cris, because I got to put $300,000 in an annuity. and then my money's locked up with the annuity, and then it's an annuity. It's the A word, the cuss word that everybody hates. And then I would say, hey, do you have a pension? Well, no. Would you like to have a pension? Well, heck yeah, I'd like to have a pension. Well, that's basically what this annuity is going to do. So taking those same numbers where you have $2,473 in 2 years, that same $300,000, this is where you really need to listen. That same $300,000 to be able to produce a 4% withdrawal rate, you would need that $300,000 to double. You need to jump to 606,825 and to be able to pull off 4%, which would give you that 24,273, but that's not guaranteed. Whereas the annuity with an A-rated company backed by the claims paying ability of the company is guaranteed for life. So this is where I think they make sense. If you look at where rates are today, and if you don't have 80+% of your income covered by Social Security and pensions, then in some cases it makes sense. And what I just ran through was some math there just to show you, okay, if I put $300,000 in, I'm 66, my husband is 62, it doesn't really matter, 66 and 62, I don't care who's older, who's younger, $300,000, you would need to double your money in 2 years. Now, I always like to say it this way. We're good, but we ain't that good. Like I would never look at somebody in the face and say, oh yeah, give me the 300,000. We'll turn it into 606,000 and you can get 24,270. No, we can't do that, but we can with an annuity. And again, I'm not trying to pitch them. I'm just trying to go over an example here because you're talking about things that can derail a well-funded retirement plan. Mm-hmm. And that is going through your investments too quickly, with a high withdrawal rate, and now all of a sudden you've pulled those investments down. The other thing it'll do is it'll mess with your psyche a little bit when you're ripping money out of that retirement plan. That can be another thing. So Graham, I'll let you take like bullet 2. We have like 4 bullets here we can kind of run through that are pretty important.
Yeah, no, the next one that we kind of had there was, your unexpected healthcare costs. And I think that is something that pretty much everybody's going to deal with in some way, shape, or form. That could be, for example, retiring before age 65 and, having to go get health insurance off the exchange or privatized health insurance, which, well, if you're working with someone and you understand how to manage your income over that time, it can be fairly reasonable. But, if you have some pensions and if you have a lot of income coming in to cover all your expenses, that could be pretty expensive right up front. You could start retirement and have more elevated expenses for a few years before getting on Medicare. Another thing that I think that a lot of people run into in retirement at some point is dental expenses. I think that that's one big thing that, a lot of people don't end up carrying any sort of dental plan with them through retirement. And that can be, kind of a bigger expense at some point, because I know, it happened to a lot of my grandparents, and I'm sure it'll happen to my parents and me at some point. At some point, our teeth tend to go, and those expenses can really rack up. So a good way to help with that is to carry somewhat of an HSA balance with you into retirement, if that's a possibility. Obviously after age 65, you can use an HSA for anything. So you have to pay the taxes if you use it for anything except healthcare, but it becomes kind of more like an IRA that can be used tax-free for healthcare expenses. But I would tell most people, if you have, I would say the average HSA balance I see is, $20,000 to $40,000, bringing it into retirement. You don't see many $300,000 HSA balances.
Really bad vehicle to die with, by the way.
Yeah.
Your wife can, or your husband can keep it. Your kid's going to pay all the taxes in the year of death. So yeah, kind of a bad vehicle to die with.
I've heard a lot of people, not to get too sidetracked, I've heard a lot of people talk about HSAs as a primary, funding vehicle for your retirement. And I do think that it's maybe a little bit more enticing than an IRA if you have to choose one or the other. But if you do end up with $1 million, in an HSA that you've been funding for 50 years, you could lose a ton of that to taxes really fast.
Your kids could lose a ton of it.
Yeah, your kids could if you pass away early in retirement. Anyways, but having a certain balance is good because, if you live 30 years in retirement, I don't think you're going to have any problem spending $30,000, $40,000 on healthcare costs, on out-of-pocket costs, even though Medicare is usually pretty good with a supplement about, not having a ton of copays and deductible costs. There's still going to be other things, like vision, like dental, that rack up over time. So I don't think that healthcare costs, I guess without even getting into long-term care, are necessarily going to derail everybody's retirement. But I think that there's something that you need to think about, because we've thrown out the number before on the show of I think it's like 315,000 or something like that.
Yeah, it keeps going up.
And now it's 330, I think. Yeah.
330. Yeah. The estimate of what you'll spend in healthcare over your retirement, if you break that out over a 30-year retirement, it's not as bad. If you're talking about $10,000 a year, that's probably somewhat realistic on total if you're including premiums and all of that.
Yep.
So I think that's going to be, amortized for most people, but it is something you still want to think about. And if you can have that account on the side to cover, maybe some of those more unexpected expenses, that can be, just help you stay on track.
Yeah, I think when we talk about healthcare, one of the big things is, do I take it? So you have Medicare, and if you're not a federal employee, and you maybe you keep your FEHB plan with you into retirement, which most do. It's like 99% of people do that. But if you're just in the private sector, and you have to choose the Advantage plan, or do you choose the supplemental plan? And we're partial towards the Medicare supplemental plans just because the coverage is a little bit deeper. Yes, they're a little bit more expensive, but there are a lot of people that choose to take the Advantage plan, and then they're a little bit more limited in the availability, of where they have to go, the doctors, there's out-of-pocket maximums, copays, et cetera. There's also travel stuff you got to worry about. So if you're traveling with one of those Medicare Advantage plans, and let's say you go to an emergency room out of state, and then the treatment is not deemed an emergency, now all of a sudden you're subject to, out-of-network doctors. So really got to put a lot of thought into this healthcare. And I think it's really confusing for a lot of people. Graham, we get a lot of feedback from people that are, getting ready to retire. And Lou, and we've even said this on the show before, you get so much mail in your mailbox. It's just junk mail.
Now Bobby's getting it. Yeah. My husband's getting it. Yeah.
So it's like, what do I do? What do I do? And so I think that's where, like, our staff, our advisory staff, when sitting down with somebody, we understand income, we understand taxation, we understand, healthcare, long-term care. Like I said, we have a whole report card that we score you on, and we talk about areas of inefficiency and how our firm can help you become a little bit more efficient. But healthcare is a big, big decision. One of the next bullets is tax implications of retirement accounts. There are people out there today that are retiring, and they're just like, hey, I'm going to live off my savings. And they should really be taking, in our opinion, some money out of a retirement account in a zero or a low tax bracket versus taking money out of savings. And then, just being able to understand the implications of that. Should I Roth convert? Should I, I'm in the 12 bracket. I mean, if you're not converting in between the 0 and 12, you should, because that's a low bracket to turn around and convert to Roth money. So tax implications, not understanding that fully, not really just being efficient. There's a ton of engineers in Huntsville. They're all about efficiency at their job, and some of them just don't understand the tax efficiency of how to pull money out of their portfolio.
Oh my. The
last one, Graham, I'll just let you kind of take this and we kind of talk back and forth about it if you want, but just market volatility.
Yeah. And I mean, I think market volatility kind of ties hand in hand with the first one that we talked about, because your withdrawal rates are important. Sequence of return risk is real. But I think your withdrawal rates are increasingly important when you're talking about a time of increased market volatility. And we've talked about this a number of times before, on the show, where this is a simulation that we run when we're planning people's retirements. Like, what if you retire tomorrow and the market loses 20%? Or I should say the market, your portfolio based on your allocation loses 15 or 20%. Can you still sustain a retirement? Because at that point, your withdrawal rate is going to be increased immediately. If you have, $1 million, let's just say, in an IRA, and you're planning on withdrawing 4% off of that, and then year one, it drops to 800,000 and you still take your 40,000 off of it. Then year two, you're going to be drawing off, say, $760,000. still doing that same $40,000 withdrawal. So your withdrawal rate goes up from 4% to 5.2%, which, might not sound like a ton, but, if you have another bad year after that, it's going up even more. And so it's going to take you, one, much longer to recover to get back to where you were before because you're taking those withdrawals. Mm-hmm. And two, probably for a good majority, or at least the early part of your retirement, your withdrawal rate is going to be increased due to that market volatility. So it's not saying necessarily that, you should never touch any of your money in retirement. It's just saying that you should be smart about, how you're taking your withdrawals from your portfolio. If you do retire in a particularly volatile time, it might not be the best year to take a huge withdrawal to pay off a house with a low interest rate or something like there are times where it can be more efficient to do that than others. So I think you do have to think about that because you want to preserve your retirement. You don't want to be scared of the market all the time. But I do think, like I was saying, those kind of go hand in hand somewhat with the first one and the last one.
Yeah, and I think, Graham, you're talking about withdrawal rates, and you mentioned withdrawal rates, and I saw you doing your calculator over there as you're talking. It's kind of hard to punch numbers in and talk on the radio at the same time.
Yeah, you got to start talking slow.
Yeah, you slow down a little bit. Yeah. So I think the thing that I kind of, when you were doing that, I was thinking, like, nobody that I work with, and you do some servicing of our clients as well, nobody really uses a dynamic model like that. So the 4% rule requires flexibility, meaning, hey, in some years you may have to slow down spending. None of our clients do that. Most people, when they retire, they need a certain amount of income, and that's what they need to live on, and it covers the basics. And sure, can they pinch pennies a little bit, maybe get it a little bit less, but they don't want to do that. Most of our clients say, all right, I need $4,000 a month out of my portfolio to fill the gaps and do lifestyle, and I don't really want to reduce it. So just remember when you're trying to rely on that 4% rule, because I think sometimes there are people out there to listen to the show that they listen and they're looking for these like nuggets of information, and they're like, oh, I'm doing this, I'm good. I'm doing this, I'm good. And I'm just going to use the 4% rule. Well, do you really understand how the 4% rule is? Do you understand or how it works? And do you understand how your portfolio is made up in terms of risk? Do you know the standard deviation? And are you willing to have more of a dynamic spending strategy where you may have to spend considerably less if the portfolio takes quite a bit of hit? And I would say that most people that we work with, they don't. They want a certain amount of income, and they want it pretty simple, and they kind of want to retire and not worry about it. They just kind of want to retire and say, hey, give me income, I'm good.
Yeah, and I'll add that on that, part of our job is doing our best to prevent that situation from happening. Yeah. That year one in retirement, you take a 20% loss and all of a sudden your spending projections are thrown off. That's why, like I said, it's one of the simulations, one of the scenarios that we're running. So we can say, even if this does happen, we can still sustain this, elevated level of spending that we've, decided on based on the strategy. So it's not like, you come back for your first annual review and there's like a drum roll. Can you still spend the same amount this year? If anything, our goal is to be as conservative as possible. So, we might be able to say, hey, you should be spending a little bit more, actually. There's a little bit more room. It's been a good year.
Right.
Or, you saved a little bit more than we thought. So, yeah, I think that, part of our job is kind of trying to alleviate that worry as much as possible and plan around that instead of, having to plan for it after it happens.
Yeah, for sure. Plan on the front side, for sure.
And I just want to make sure that I give out the phone number again right now. It is 256-937-2010. I give you that number because you can call Cris for a complimentary discovery visit. You may call the number. You can text the word visit if you prefer texting, and then get in and see Cris and his team. You're hearing Graham right now of WG Financial Group. Cris and Graham are certified financial planners, and they're both financial advisors. They would love to help guide you with any questions that you might have. Everything that we talk about on our show is so important for your retirement plan. Check them out yourself at WGFinancialGroup.com. And we're so happy you joined us today. This is the Rocket City Retirement Show. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer, and today we're talking about trying to help protect your retirement from hidden obstacles. And we talk about things like this a lot. One challenge, and Cris, you kind of mentioned it, that sometimes catches retirees off guard. And that's the fact that their taxes are, actually sometimes higher than during their working years. So tell us, the tax strategies you guys use, because you do use them and you're not tax preparers, but you plan. Talk about how you can help protect retirement income from excessive taxes.
Well, I think as an advisor, you better know kind of what the tax code is allowing people to do from a withdrawal standpoint, and using some of those strategic, I would call them like timing in certain cases of pulling out money. So we talked about this on the show a number of times. So let's give an example. If you just have Social Security income and that's it, you're in a federal zero state bracket. So then there's a little bit of a window where you can pull out some taxable money, so straight from an IRA, and still not have to pay any federal taxes on it, and pay very low state on it as well, depending on your age. So using the strategic timing of how to take money out, I think, is important. The coordination of Social Security, I think most people, and Graham said it best, and I'll never forget it. It's we were on the show and he's talking about some people treat it like a game. It's like, I want to get my money. I'm going to get it before I die, and meanwhile, you focus so much on that, you overlook the tax impact of Social Security and in a positive way, because we know that only up to 85% of it is subject to taxation, depending on your other income. And then also, the longer we wait, the more we get. And people say, I'm not going to live this long. I'm going to die early. Well, most people are living it longer than average life expectancy. So you're cutting yourself short there, because like literally these Social Security gamers, maybe that's another term we could use, like kids are, nowadays kids play all these video games. They're called gamers. We got these Social Security gamers out there trying to, bet on themselves dying early. And I'm like, good grief, man. I don't want to think about that. I'm expecting to live a long time. And then lastly, we talk about, the spousal protection of it all. You collect early and you're the high income earner, you've kind of penalized your spouse as well. So it can have like a trifecta of like negative stuff going on with Social Security. So that, Social Security is one of our core tax planning strategies at the office when we're doing tax planning. Social Security is right there in it. And then, Graham, I'll let you kind of speak a little bit to Roth conversions. That's another one of our strategies at the office.
Yeah, I think that Roth conversions are something that needs to be looked at for pretty much everybody going into retirement, to even just look at it. I do think when you're doing it, you need to make sure that you're doing it thoughtfully. You're doing it with regard to your whole tax situation. I've run into situations in the past where people are just kind of Roth converting because it's something to do, and they're not necessarily really doing it with any real strategy or real year-to-year projection of how much they should be doing. They're more or less just saying, I'll just take $50,000 and I'll just Roth convert it. And I'm not saying that's necessarily the worst thing in the world to do, but there's more factors you need to consider than just, should I Roth convert a little bit of money this year? You have to kind of consider everything around it. I also think that a lot of times people are a little too focused on Roth converting everything. Like there can be value to having some pre-tax money for qualified charitable distributions and other expenses later in life.
Long-term care.
Yeah. And, long-term care for deductions there. So there's certainly reasons to hold on to a little bit of it. So I think when you're talking about Roth conversions, I wouldn't say that I think it's necessarily a good idea for everybody to just go and start Roth converting. I would say that you need to really know why you're doing the Roth conversions that you're doing. And you should probably be doing them with regard to all of your other income sources on a year-to-year basis. There have been times where I've met with a client and it just kind of happened that at the end of the year, they didn't spend as much as they thought they were going to, and their tax situation was very, very low. And that's a time where you talk about, hey, maybe we look at a Roth conversion this year because we're going to be in a really low bracket. It's a good time to do it. We're not going to affect any Medicare premiums or anything like that. So again, it has to be in regard to your whole financial situation. And, I don't think it's a one size fits all, but I do think that it can be a way, especially for someone with very, very large amounts of IRA money, to consider to see those tax savings actually in their lifetime.
Yeah. I think the other things too, just kind of add onto that is, low income years, obviously to us, it's kind of a no brainer there, but also when you're younger, I think it makes a lot of sense because you have a lot more time for the money to recover. And then if you have a much younger spouse, maybe 5 to 10 years younger, then that makes a sense as well, because chances are you pass away, your spouse is going in the single filer bracket if they don't get remarried. And now all of a sudden they got to deal with all this IRA money and RMDs and such. And sometimes it just makes sense to kind of look at some Roth conversions there. But honestly, probably the thing that stops most people is it's a pretty big tax pill to swallow in some cases. It's a lot of times it's it's a 5-figure tax, a lot of times on the federal side. So, you have to be willing to stomach that. And then I think the reason you're doing it is really taking advantage of lower tax brackets today, but also you're kind of disinheriting the IRS later on. In other words, you're kind of just saying, I don't care what you do with the brackets later on, because I'm going to go ahead and convert my way through this in a low bracket, or maybe 24% maybe. And then I don't want to worry about it because I hear all this talk about taxes going up and, what if it does? And, now all of a sudden they're taxing my IRA at 50% instead of, 37. Converting your way, you're kind of getting rid of that guesswork later on, because here's kind of the deal. This is reality right here. None of us, Graham, not Chris, not Luann, not your CPA, not Donald Trump. None of us know what tax rates are going to be 10, 15, 20 years down the road. We know what they are today, and we know that they're going to sunset at the end of 2025 unless a extension is granted. And remember, that takes Congress to get that passed through. That cannot be signed by an executive order pen. That takes Congress. So we know what they are today, and they're going to sunset at the end of 2025. We can probably, like I said, assume there's going to be some sort of an extension. Well, guess what? That's basically 3 more years, because we know if, let's say, the Democratic Party jumps in, and it's the same way either way. Let's say Democrats jump in 2028. They're going to be like, oh, this whole Trump tax code is trash. It's only for the rich, et cetera, in which I won't even go into why that's not true. It really hurts the middle class, but Democrats will jump in, let's change it. Or it could be the Republicans 15 years down the road. They're like, oh, Democratic tax reform is trash. Let's change it again. The reality is we just don't know, because the next party comes in, they don't like it, they could change it. And by doing those Roth conversions, you're just essentially, getting rid of that. And you're also, by doing so, you're kind of managing your RMDs to some respects as well, because Roth IRA money doesn't require minimum distribution. So that's a lot of tax talk here at the tail end of the show. Luann, we got to wrap it up because we are at the end of the show. Thank everybody for listening. Thank you for being here, Luann. Thanks, Graham. Really good conversation. Graham, find us a really good reel next week.
I'll be on the prowl.
Be on the prowl. Doom scroll yourself into infinity to find one of those so we can do another one next week. So hope everybody enjoyed the show. I'll give our number out, 256-937-2010, if you want to sit down with myself or Graham, which, by the way, we had somebody call in the other week. It's like, I want to sit down with Graham. And I was like, wait a minute. What about Chris? They want the young guy. They want the young guy. Yeah, true story. The staff told me, the team members told me, they said, hey, we just had somebody call in and want to sit down with Graham. So you want to sit down with me or Graham? It's all good. We just want to help. 256-937-2010. I hope everybody has an awesome and blessed week. And remember to serve every person in every situation with a servant heart.
Do you want to feel confident about your financial future? Let Chris Wallace from WG Financial Group guide you through it. Take the first step today. WG Financial Group is here to help you plan, retire, and play. Just text the word VISIT to 256-937-2010. Again, text the word VISIT to 256-937-2010 to schedule a meeting today.
Investment advisory products and services made available through AE Wealth Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Insurance products are offered through the insurance business WG Insurance Services. WG Financial Group is an investment advisory practice that offers products and services through AE Wealth Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. AEWM does not offer insurance products. Insurance products offered by WG Insurance Services are not subject to investment advisor requirements. AEWM and WG Insurance Services are not affiliated companies. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. WG Financial Group is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by WG Financial Group. This radio show is a paid placement.